to another episode of the Vet Podcast. I really should get a new little intro start. That's like my podcast, my regular podcast, but that's all I know. But I think it's going to be a cool episode today. We have Doug Katz. Am I saying that right?
You did. You did.
Co-founder of Nulu. I don't know too much about that, but after today, I hope to know a little bit more about this, and I hope you guys enjoy this conversation. So, Doug, where do you live, Doug?
I live in a little town about an hour and a half northwest of Chicago called Trout Valley,
Okay.
and it's an idyllic setting. It was pivotal in me coming up with some of these ideas. It's a really calming spot, and it really opened my brain. So it's near kind of, I don't know, anybody who's familiar with the Chicagoland area, Crystal Lake, Cary, that kind of area, but far enough away to be away from the gravitational pull of the city, but
hmm
close enough that we can get down there whenever we want and enjoy what the city has to offer.
Now, I know it's like July, but is it cold yet there? That Chicago weather
You know what? It's
crazy.
not. It's actually, we have, we're going through the same climate change everybody else does.
hmm
And as a result, winters have gotten milder. We had a couple really heat snaps this summer, but it's generally pretty nice here. We had a lot of humidity this weekend, but generally it's pretty nice. I like the winter and all that. So it
hmm
depends on what you think is cold. Like we have a couple 60-degree nights and stuff like that. But that just means you open the window and you're not paying for air conditioning.
Yeah, I like it. I live in Tennessee. I live right outside of Chattanooga, so
Okay.
um, I like those days where it's 67 degrees. It's still warm to me and everything like that. So, um, I'm in a wheelchair, so I don't move a lot sometimes. So I like the weather
Right.
to be kind of
Right.
warmish because
Right.
I get cold fast.
Right. And ice is a real issue then too.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm actually originally from Maryland, so um,
Okay.
so it's even colder there than here. I don't know. I enjoy living here in Tennessee. It's great. So, um, Doug, you are a military vet. What branch did you serve in?
I was in the Army, so I spent 4 years at the United States Military Academy, and then did
Mhm.
my 5 years after that in Colorado at Fort Carson with the Fourth ID.
Okay,
Now I was artillery, but I was assigned to an infantry division.
okay. So you said you went to
I
a
went to West
school,
Point.
West
Yeah,
Point.
I
How
went
was
to I
that?
went to I went to West Point for from 90. I graduated in 93.
Okay. So what made you want to do West Point?
You
You
know,
know, I don't.
I it's I had a very good guidance counselor. I wanted to be in the military. I had gotten into I gotten a ROTC scholarship, and
Mhm.
had I done that, I would have gone Marines because it was through the Marines. I had actually visited Annapolis. So when you said
Mhm.
Maryland, I thought I had visited Annapolis. I wanted to go there. I wanted to be a Marine, but
Mhm.
at the time, the congressman who gave me my nomination had already selected somebody for the Naval Academy. So he was like, "Hey, you know what? I could send you West Point, or I would also nominate you for Merchant Marine Academy." I picked West Point because I really wanted to be a fighting person. Like I didn't.
Mhm.
I like the dirt and being out in the cold, and it just, for me, that works. I'm not nautical, and there was no way they were putting me behind the controls of a aircraft. So I went to West Point, and the first time I saw it was rolling through the gates, the beginning of Beast Barracks, which is the basic training for the military academy.
And how was your experience in the military academy?
You know what? It was phenomenal. Really, my daughter actually just graduated from the Coast Guard Academy,
Okay.
and what's been neat for me is a chance to look back and really value what it gave me in terms of what I became as a leader, who I became as a person. So I feel I owe a lot to the academy, and when you're there, it's terrible, right? And you're there, it's like any everybody would do it if it was easy,
Yeah.
but I think the being torn down and it being immersive, where a basic training, boot camp is however long, and you go out to your unit. This is 4 years of very, very in depth uh, leadership, where you're learning about it scholastically, and you're at college, but then you're also fulfilling a role within a military organization, and
Mhm.
I think that really has an ability to crystallize what's in people if they have that um, the ambition and character and all those things the same way any part of the military does, and turn them into the leaders that hopefully prevent catastrophe if and when we ever have to go to war.
That's cool. And you say you did time in Denver?
I was in
How was your time in
Colorado
Denver?
Springs, so I
Oh,
actually,
okay.
my goal would had when I was there, I wanted to go to Germany. I wanted to go to Europe. I had spent time in Europe as a cadet. I was like, this is awesome. But it was during the drawdown, right? I graduated the academy in 93. So we were pulling some units out of Europe. And the year before me, anybody in my branch, I was artillery, who picked Germany got sent to Oklahoma. And nothing against Oklahoma, but Oklahoma isn't my vibe. So when given the choice, I chose Colorado. And it was, I mean, that was one of the really amazing posts. When I went there, it was not really deployable. During the time I was there, they became Force 21, where they were testing out, the big thing they were testing out in terms of stuff hitting the military was the Javelin, right? That tells you how long ago it was. But it became a more relevant unit at that point. So it was kind of interesting. The beginning of my career there, really it was, they used to call it Fort Cartoon because, we deployed to the National Training Center, and that was
Mhm.
about it. And, but it became a lot more as I was leaving. And because of that, spent some time in Kuwait. Luckily, never being shot at. I was very fortunate. And then I got out in 1998.
Talked about wanting to go to Germany. My dad was in the army. We was in actually in Baumholder, Germany. Now it
Okay.
was from 90 to 93, so I was between 5 and 8, 5 and
Yeah.
8. Yeah, so I don't really know
Yep.
too much. I surprisingly know, even in my memory now, like remember a lot, but I still don't remember a lot of
Right.
like that time
Right.
of my life. I'm still young, but
Right.
we were there for a little bit, and I remember we had to go to the doctor in Frankfurt, you know. So I remember certain things, but that it's still I would
Yeah.
like
It
to go
was.
back and visit.
It was one of the really cool places where I think you can go and you have a great base of operations to go explore Europe, but you also, because you're on a military base, you're still kind of, you still have a little bit of that feel of still being rooted in the States. So it's a really great place for, I really wish there were the same opportunities for younger service members to be forward deployed but not being shot at,
Mm-hmm.
and having the ability, that was really one of the, when I was there, NATO was still, really, there weren't the questions that we were dealing with now in terms of our involvement, but you would train with other units from other countries, and the ability from that to gain an appreciation of the cultures, right? Like you'd go
Mm-hmm.
train with German soldiers and then have, hang out with them after and drink beer and cook out and realize the similarities and celebrate the
Mm-hmm.
differences and trade insignias. And, that was one of the amazing things that the military represented. And I hope we don't lose that, because I think it is for a young person with ambition. I don't think there's any better way to become the best person that they can be. I'm going to say that because I was an army guy, right? Be all you can be, but then also get a chance to see the world and do it safely, and all these things that came with it. I hope that we retain that, because it really does make better citizens, right? They're connected to the U.S. You realize why, you go live overseas for a while. You realize why you like living in the U.S., right? You realize,
Mm-hmm.
what advantages that we have, and I think that connects people to the country. So I do hope that we get to keep that, especially through the military, because that it makes great citizens.
I definitely agree with that. I think my youngest brother that just got in, he wanted to go out the country first. His first like being stationed somewhere, he wanted to go and do that. But he didn't. He's in Virginia, but
There you go.
I think that which is my family, which ultimately for him, I think that it was probably really great that he didn't go out of the country yet. And he's in Virginia. My family lives in Virginia, so he's like
That's
two,
awesome.
3 hours away from. So it's just a drive up the road. So, but he gets to live out that, and maybe a second time around, he's able to go somewhere, be a
Sure.
little farther away from family. So,
Well, if you serve long enough, you're gonna go overseas at some point.
mhm. Yeah, my other brother, he's when he went in, his first station, he was in Japan for 3 years. I only got to see him one time in that whole 3 years. So yeah,
Wow.
he came back to Virginia, and now he's in the States now. Well, he's out the military. My sister-in-law's still in. She's an officer now.
Sure.
So, but you spent 5 years after the you spent five. I'm sorry, you spent 5 years in
In
the
the
military,
military.
and then
Yep.
you get out. How
Yep.
was your mindset?
You
Waking
know,
up that you don't have to put that uniform
it
on.
it was interesting, right? It was a very different world in corporate America. It still was a time where like recruiters would recruit junior military officers. I was a captain getting out, and they would say, "Hey, it's just like the army. You make more money," and they were right.
Mm,
But I got out. Let's see, I got out in '98, and in 2000, I started out in the rail industry. wasn't my cup of tea. It was cool. Moved into tech. I was in the telecom industry, and you had the early 2000s. The bust, right? The dot com bust. And that really changed everything. I look back sometimes and think maybe I should have stayed in,
mm-hmm,
because I think that what was sort of that agreement of, hey, you work hard, you show loyalty to your company, you add value, you'll have a job here, you'll have a pension, you'll be taken care of. That all changed, I think, in the early 2000s, and that really changed the face of how my transition was. And I think life is always like what people say, oh, what was your transition out of the military? Well, I mean,
mm-hmm,
every day should be sort of a transition for you in getting rid of a bad habit, picking up a good one,
mm-hmm,
chasing a dream. I wrote an article once on my Substack, about 1.3% of your life being every year if you look at your entire life, and then as you get older that accelerates. But if you think of that in terms of days, then you should always sort of be moving forward. And I didn't follow that when I was in corporate America, and I think I I chased what everybody else was: security, a good job and pay. And I think that a lot of that corporate culture has stratified now. And I, now I'm an entrepreneur, right? I moved away from that world when, as part of my transition, only 30 years later, I looked and said, this isn't the right thing for me to be doing. I should be in more of an entrepreneurial um, endeavor. And
mm-hmm,
I don't think, I think that, right now with sort of the AI explosion, you're seeing sort of another creation of technology that's going to radically change stuff. And I think that's going to change what corporate America is like and things like
mm-hmm,
that. Before it was the internet and some of the other things. Um, and for me, I never really caught up to say, wow, there's mechanisms where I can do something other than this corporate world, where I feel innovation is gone and things like that. And now I think for guys transitioning, I hope that there is more discussion about start a business, do something different, because if the stability isn't there, and a long answer to your question on how my transition was, but I think what's basically has come out of it is instability in corporate America. You're no safer any day that you go in than the day before, where it used to be a little bit different in how all that stuff was run. And as a result, for me, that sort of agreement, when that didn't exist, then it's on to something else. And I was in lending for a long time, and I think the world is just way different now. Um, so I think that, I guess where I'm getting at, and this is a terrible answer, is transition is much different now, um, than it was back then. Where
Hmm.
back then it was, I'm going from one bureaucracy to the other, but they're both bureaucracies, and in a way they're monolithic and always be there. That's not the truth anymore. But the other part of it is, when I left the military, and this is the point I really wanted to get to. So if you're editing it, you can get rid of a lot of the other stuff. But I loved certain parts of the military. I
Hmm.
loved, once I was out in the field and stopped bitching about going to the field, I liked the uncertainty. I liked having to think on my feet. I liked having to come up with innovative ways of solving problems that you may never have seen before, and understanding how that's going to impact what's going on. I like trying to beat somebody. I like the fight.
Hmm.
That's not corporate America. Corporate America now is, how do I not lose my job and my health coverage?
Yeah.
And as a result, if you're a fighter and you like that, and I'm not talking, fight, but if you like that, okay, there's my competition. How am I going to impose my will upon them through great operations, a great product, an amazing team, great leadership, all of that stuff? Well, that's the same thing as being out in the field and figuring out how you're going to beat the bad guys.
Hmm.
So now that's where I've gotten to, and it took me too long in my transition to say, why am I unhappy? It's not the fault of the company. It's not the fault of my boss. Not the fault of my coworkers. Not the fault of the person I'm selling mortgages to. In some cases, there were dysfunctional components of all that, but the fault was, I had to get back to what I was good at. And at one point, I was even looking at my old OERs, or the officer evaluation reports, when my daughter, who admittedly she was a terrible cadet, I was trying to have a discussion with her about, just her responsibilities as she became a leader and not a follower. And I looked at my old OERs, and they all said this guy should be in the field. And that's why, when you talk about transition, and I look and say, people were saying that about me. Keep this guy as a field leader. This is what he's good at. I should have taken that and said, in the real world, how do I transition to take what I'm good at and turn it into a career? Instead, I looked and said, I'm going to transition from the Army to something else that's like the Army. Instead of saying, no, I got to transition from the job I was good at to a
Hmm.
job I was good at, wherever that job will be. So that's the important part of any transition, I think, for anybody, whether it's military to civilian, whether you're going from one industry to the next. You're not going to solve the problems the way people think they are. The transition has to be like, okay, how can I transition and take my superpowers and make them valuable in some other component?
I definitely like that answer. That was cool. Uh, Profound. um, you talked about AI. How is your relationship with the movement of AI in our world right now?
I'm sorry, my relationship.
With AI? Um,
I actually, I love it, and I'm going to give a
mhm.
non-corporate example. I use it for business planning. I use it all the time. I use it for about everything. But right
Mhm.
now, this is an example of, I think, where everyday people can free up their time. So let's say you wanted to start a business, and you're like, okay, how do I use AI to start my business? Well, there's things you can do for business planning, creating all the stuff that you need to do. There's a lot out there, but it can free your time in other ways, so you have time to start the business. So I love it. Right now, my daughter was driving my car. It got totaled, not by her fault. She got rear-ended. And I'm
Mhm.
dealing with an insurance company who shall remain nameless, but I'm in a dispute with them. I was in 15 minutes able to create a document to launch a formal dispute against them and send complaints to the offices of insurance for the states that were relevant, as well as any other regulatory organization that can make their life difficult. If I did that myself, that would be hours. I was able to do that in 15 minutes. That freed me up time to work on my startup. With my startup, when I get on, when I do my pitch to pod hosts, I've created a good prompt. I've given it a lot of back history of what I do and all that, and it's able to help me craft good pitches that I do all the editing. But it is amazing. I mean, I spent it this weekend. The belt on my John Deere mower on the cutting deck broke, and I was able to figure some things out without having to search everywhere else. I did find out I was smarter than my AI because I was instinctively thought a part went somewhere and it started hallucinating and telling me all sorts of fake stuff. But I talk to people all the time, and say, and when they ask that kind of question, like, what do you think of AI? It's like fire, right? I could burn a house down, I could cook a meal, but if it makes me more productive, and with my knife, it's been able to help me supercharge the development and getting to where we need to be. I just finished another accelerator with my wife on a business that we're launching together. She's going to kind of take the lead on it, but we used AI throughout the entire process of going through the accelerator to create all the relevant parts of the business model and the business plan. It's an essential part of life, and I think the degree that people either resist it or don't figure out a way to productively understand it. You may choose to not use it, but I think not understanding what it can do for you or not, and how it could impact you negatively if you don't get it, is pretty rough. This is a great example. So I was never a product guy. And I went to an abilities expo with predominantly disabled attendees to demonstrate this. And I needed a release for people to sign, so that they say, hey, I know it's a knife, I could cut myself. I had it done in 5 minutes, right? And ready to go. So this is where I don't even use a search engine anymore. I only use AI because I find the answers are better, but you have to know what you're looking for, either in an article. I've written some white papers that have been AI enabled. Well, they're no less relevant. I know what I wanted to say. I'm just not keystroking. I was able to fix a shower that had threads on a part, like a lock nut, that were unobtainable. And through some, unique ideation back and forth with my AI ideation partner, I guess in that case, I was able to solve problems that plumbers couldn't, right? But what I did do is I paid it forward. And I went to Home Depot because I was buying parts, and I'd been in there 4 or 5 times, and she's like, oh, you figured out how to do it. I'm like, yeah, I used AI. She actually said back to me, AI, what is that? And I said, come over here. And I showed her everything I did. And I said, when people come in, you could take a picture of what they need. You can use it using your knowledge and what AI can do. Maybe you identify a part quicker and come up with a solution. But that's standing on the floor of Home Depot. This can help everybody. And I think that the more people understand it also, the more that they'll understand what should be regulated and what should not be regulated. Because right now, when you hear people talking about this, and there's all sorts of terrible commercials out there by different political organizations that have an agenda. But at the end of the day, I think if people use it more, they could say, oh, I see where this is really dangerous. And I want to talk to my elected official to regulate this part of it, but not to regulate this part of it. And to create things, or, oh, I can find some really interesting things if I want to create a product and know what prior art was out there to be able to know how to do everything I need to for the patent, and then come up with a rudimentary set of claims and everything else with the intellectual property. And it may even tell you, here are the best attorneys in your area to reach out to with experience, not only in writing patents, but in the area that you do it, right? So But then what that also allows you to do is figure out, wait a minute, if I'm finding so much about other people's patents, my patent's at risk too, right? So you start to
Mm-hmm.
understand this give and take. And the best advice I've given anybody is go watch, there are a couple of Marvel movies out there with Tony Stark, but think of it as Jarvis, right? It works for you.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that is there to help you. And if you find out the right way to do it, and it's an assistant you can cuss at that never feels bad. So I yell at my AI all the time when it
Yeah.
hallucinates. But I think, again, a long answer to a short question, but I don't care who you are, right? This is where if you're a plumber and you're on site doing some type of uh, you're estimating a job or you're trying to come up with something, you can check your assumptions, right? There isn't anybody I don't think who it can't help. And the good part is if
Mm-hmm.
you know your job already, kind of like me figuring out the cutting bed on this John Deere mower. Um, if you kind of know what you're doing, you could look and say, this doesn't sound right.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's right 90% of the time and the other 10% you know when it's wrong, well, great. Then you are a super. You're like a cyborg brain. It's amazing. It really is amazing.
Yeah, for sure. It's helped me a lot. I'm in a process of. I told you I'm in a wheelchair, so I was like,
Okay.
I just turned 40. I'm like, I've been thinking about this for a couple of years. I was like, I really want to start a business. Is I can't go and work at a factory. I can't do all that, but I want to start a cleaning business and a remote cleaning business where I get the jobs and I subcontract it out and do it like that. So there's times where I've had to go on ChatGPT and ask questions about how that works, and I had to get little things. I think so one of my things is I had to get a Cleveland number because I still have my Maryland number. So if I'm going to be a local business, I need a local number. So I had to go on there and buy a number for my phone and stuff like that. So I had to do things to even do a text message. I have to get that whole, I forget what it's called when they say stop, hit stop, and I had to set those messages up.
Oh,
And
like extensions or right, whatever that.
yeah, so I had to get those type of things. And I could just go on ChatGPT and get that work. I had to rework some of the wording, the verbiage sometimes, but I got a
Yeah,
lot
but
of
you could
yeah.
go even broader. You could say, "Hey, I'm in a wheelchair. I want to start a cleaning business." Like it will create the basic business plan,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can really narrow down with a level of granularity to whatever you're like. Oh, okay, I get this part. I don't get this part. You could say what grants out there are
Mm-hmm.
for disadvantaged businesses. That's where all of a sudden it becomes a big combat multiplier where you're able to say, okay, I need money. What are the best capital sources for
Mm-hmm.
a disadvantaged business, specifically disabled owned, and show me priority the ones I don't have to pay back? You
Yeah.
may find out there's 30, 40, whatever, like thousands of dollars out there
Mm-hmm.
for guys just like that. And that's where, and I always say this, man, like outside of this podcast, whatever you need, look me up, man. Give me a call on how you would want to use any of these tools or what I've done, because I've had my success with Nulu more so than ever in my career, and with the other stuff I've been doing has been in the agency of other people helping me out.
Mm-hmm.
And I always make that offer on anybody, right? Like this is where I believe I love small business stuff. So hearing you say that, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Any way I can help out anytime, man.
Well, for sure, yeah, I would definitely like to link up, and I'm all about picking people's brains with things like that because we're not in this. I like to have this community. Like I don't want to do things by myself. Like even though it's mine, like we all have a collective in the success of each other. So um, I
Well,
don't
and
believe in
figure
living
out
life by
actually
myself.
what parts you're good at. So there was a time, and it kind of harkens back to that transition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where when you're in the military, you're expected to know your job and learn things, and you're always sort of, you know, if your guys are turning wrenches on your vehicle, you want to be down there working with them because you want to know how it works. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I went too far with that and was too much about I've got to figure out how to do everything about being a founder.
Mm-hmm.
I'm contrary to that now. I look at it and say, I know what I'm good at. I'm very good on ideation. I'm good in business development. I'm good in other things. Because of that, in the structure that I have with my business, right? Nulu is a subsidiary of a bigger business. And
Mm-hmm.
that bigger business, I've got some of the same partners, some not. But a lot of times I may not be the guy to run the day to day once we've launched a business.
Mm-hmm.
But I am good at taking an idea, validating that idea, finding the right people along the way. My joke that is less and less funny because I use it too much is I'm kind of halfway between Forrest Gump and Oppenheimer, right? I'm really good at building these teams, but I like to sort of float on the wind, and you find the right people, and you say,
Mm-hmm.
"Boy, I built this. These are the guys to take this company pro." And boom, they're going to go with it. And then I'm on to the next idea. And that's, I want to build the companies and have other people who are the right people for the job to do
Mm-hmm.
that. The company my wife and I are starting together has roots in the group gifting. It's going to kind of transform the world of group gifting when people need a gift, right? Let's say sickness, end of life, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a pretty intense guy. I'm not the right guy to take that one to market. She works in the hospice space. She's
Mm-hmm.
very staid. She understands. She can read a room better, right? So I'm good at just finding those people and saying, okay, you guys are the ones to take this to market. Now let's get another business going. And
Mm-hmm.
as a result, that's kind of where in your situation when you say it's mine, keep it as yours. But if you're not good at prospecting, find someone to prospect, right? And
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, here's the deal. Here's the type of people. Here's a list of numbers. Go do that. And then when you get the call, I want to take it over because I want to make that relationship or whatever, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
find the crap that you don't like to do and don't spend time doing it. Like there was times I was trying to make websites. I'm terrible at making websites. I don't have the eye for how the graphics should go and all that. I'm trying to optimize stuff. That's not the same thing. This is because when I created the original prototype, Fred Flintstone looking prototype in my garage, I have a friend who I'd forgotten was a designer. Well,
Mm-hmm.
he said, I love the idea. We can take it somewhere. He was 50-50 from Jump Street because what I made doesn't go to this without his skills.
For sure.
So in your situation, I think you'll make more if you're like, oh, you could almost, we're going back to the AI, you could almost say, hey, here's what I am good at. What holes do I need to fill first? And if
Mm-hmm.
I fill these holes, then I can go out and do two things: book appointments and make sure the client's happy. Boom, you're good. And then
Mm-hmm.
you start filling those roles with the right people. So I think I love it. I love it when I hear ideas because I think your idea makes sense, right? I think that it connects people will naturally want to do business with you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could get it, the hardest part is getting it off the ground, right? And then
Yep.
you're good to go. So
Yeah. I mean, I'm good with networking. I'm good with people. I love building relationships and things like that. Um, so there's going to be some things that I do really well, and then I'll have some people with me that excel better than. I don't like hiring people. Like I don't. I would like to sit in, but I don't really want to talk to people and ask them questions. Like it seems weird right now, but like that actually like do a job interview. I don't think that's something I would like. Now I will if I
you
have
know
to do it, I have to do it with.
that will change though
Mm-hmm.
when you're invested in it, right? All of a sudden, when it's
Mm-hmm.
your cleaning business, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, if I send this person out, they're going to be representing Lucas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to go like if they don't represent you, so you'll be more invested in it. But it might be like, hey, I've got like 5 questions I asked. That's it. Like if you, so ultimately you may find a way that works for you. But I have found Well, one, I pick good partners, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
you find a good partner also who accentuates the things that you don't do well, but also is better at hiring and likes
Mm-hmm.
to do that. And then you say, listen, I do want to interview him once, but it's going to be about the stuff that I feel is important. Like, hey, how do you handle this situation? And you'll get there. But I love it. I love hearing when people want to be entrepreneurial. I think we have
Mm-hmm.
to get back to that. And I love it when it's someone who the world would think the odds are against for some reason and basically
Mm-hmm.
says, I'm better at this shit because the odds have been against me all the time. So I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it, man. I love it.
For sure. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about Nulu or whatever the business that you do.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
let's hear some of this stuff. You showed me the knife.
So
Yeah.
so this the Nulu is I invented it when, and this is a lesson in transformation. I we moved to where I live now from closer. We used to live closer to Chicago, and I had a
Mm-hmm.
workshop, and I had taken bladesmithing classes and learned basic blade making.
Mm-hmm.
And but I also have upper extremity issues, and a knife like this, a traditional knife, has a lot of issues. Right? It's a linear knife, meaning point,
Mm-hmm.
blade, handle. This is not a kitchen knife. This is a Saex, actually. But if you use a regular knife, you're trying to transfer force. If I'm standing up, I'm trying to transfer force from here to
Mm-hmm.
here, which doesn't work well. The only way this
Mm-hmm.
is ever aligned is like this. And as a multitasker, right? Like this is a very ancient design. This would be a great field knife, right? You could stab if you had to. You could dress an animal. You could hunt with it. You could do all kinds of things with it. But once you don't need the tip anymore, it's no longer a multitasker in that way. Because with the tasking, this actually is primary. This is secondary if you look at the design. So what we did is we said, what if you put the control area over the cutting area? On here, the control area is offset. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what it does is it means that force transfer is direct. It's lined up directly with my hand. You can see my nasty blister. I was cutting down trees this weekend. Um, but you can see how it aligns. And what ends up
Mm-hmm.
happening is the force transfer is direct. And because it's circular, everybody can find their optimal spot on here.
Okay.
Because if my hand, think that this is reversed, right? If I'm cutting, little changes in my wrist mean that a different part of the blade is now aligned with my skeleton, which means
Mm-hmm.
that's almost perfect force transfer. And our patent pending part of it is this part of it, where we've increased by about 90 degrees the cutting area on an ulu, which this is patterned. Nulu is the new ulu. So it's
Mm-hmm.
patterned after the ulu. But the cool part is it can also be reversed. And now, if you look, there's a different part of my hand or a different part of the blade that I'm aligned with. So what happens is now it's more of a cleaver or a
Okay.
precision cutting knife. And what this has done is it is exceptional force transfer. So you don't have to work as hard to cut. And so it's good for people who don't have upper extremity issues. If you have upper extremity issues, or you're in a wheelchair, being able to use the back edge when you're cutting and more into like a seated cutting direction means that now you're not pushing forward where you lose all your
Mm-hmm.
strength. And one thing we've discovered is before, when I was showing the traditional knife, if you're using a knife like this and you're trying to cut, you grip. The
Mm-hmm.
minute you grip, there's something called the kinetic chain. The kinetic chain is the connection of your core to the extremity, right? Think about if someone is swinging a golf club or doing anything, if you disrupt the kinetic chain, then they lose the force that's in their core and it'll be a weaker swing or whatever. If you're gripping a knife like this, you're breaking the kinetic chain. Where when I'm talking about if you're seated, let's say, and you're cutting backwards, you're using your core to cut. When I'm
Mm-hmm.
standing up, I'm using my core actually a lot. And it's interesting. We demoed this. Our first trade show was the Abilities Expo in Chicago, and I was blown away. Like, we were designing it around upper extremity, but then there were a large number of attendees who had cerebral palsy. There was some stroke, some other accidents, paralysis, and things like that. And what I realized is, yes, the force transfer is much better, but if you don't have to grip, now,
Mm-hmm.
like, I've used it like this before, gripping it this lightly, and you can see how lightly, because you're using your core to cut, you don't have to grip it.
Okay.
And when you're doing that now, um, and you're not death gripping this thing like this knife,
Mm-hmm.
then what you're doing is you're connecting the cutting edge to your core, and you're able to cut. And it was profound for me when there were some families there where there would be a young adult or a teen who, for whatever reason, could not use a knife prior, or it just wasn't practical, who bought one and were walking away joking about how, hey, now you have to help make meals. And it wasn't like, oh, like when I tell my kids they have to make a meal. It was joy that they're able to participate. And it was
Yes.
amazing. So that's where the Nulu is. We launched in December of last year with a Kickstarter and shipped on that. Finished that one out, which was nice. Now we're fully up and running. And for Disability Pride Month, we're currently offering a 10% discount with the code Ability25. But we're
Okay.
totally up and running. A couple of items on there are showing as sold out. And we should have availability in the future, a cutting board and a couple of other things. But it's been an interesting time, because I have found that the other thing that drives me, and you talk about transition in the past, and I kind of like to bring back some of the things we were talking about, is
Mm-hmm.
in the military, you also have purpose. You wake up and you feel you're making a difference, and you're doing something to benefit your fellow Americans and your fellow citizens of the globe and the earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, this truly gave me, if my dog starts barking, I'm going to apologize in advance.
That's all
He's asleep on the
good.
bed right there, and my son came down. I wake up every day now saying, how can I get this out there? And we're working with state adaptive agencies and things like that. But we're finding that it's going to be very impactful in the entirety of the disabled community. We're finding that this one I never would have called the vision impaired community, because you can see how this lines up perfectly. Well, if you're vision impaired, a knife like this doesn't line up exactly, right? It sort of does,
Mm-hmm.
but I got play in my wrist.
Mm-hmm.
With this, where my hand is where the blade is. That's the first time I've demoed it that way. But because of that, they all still use a cutting glove, but now you know where you're cutting.
Mm-hmm.
So we found a lot of different applications, and now, because we're really getting out there, we're finding a lot of interest in the homesteading and outdoor community. I am not a hunter. I like to shoot guns. I like to do all the real, cool. I'm not a hunter. But I've been asked a ton of times, can you dress a deer with it? I've never dressed a deer with a knife like this or any other knife. So we have some testing going on with that in the homesteading community, and this is where I'm sure you'll get this, is adaptive and just good design are very, very close. So there was a guy, one of our affiliates now, who is in the homesteading community, and he was like, during canning season, I need that knife, because when you're cutting all of your yield in a
Mm-hmm.
matter of days, it wears you out. Well, guess what? That's because this tool that we all use every day is the wrong tool. A person who
Mm-hmm.
cuts a lot said, I'm not trying to impress anybody. I want this. So we're hoping it becomes the explosion of change in the cutting world that we hope. But
For sure.
part of it is, and you and I were talking before you turned it on, the interview, is this is not our one and done.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, I've got a bigger community, a bigger company that we are developing as a venture studio to be able to roll out more adaptive products.
Mm-hmm.
And um, what we're finding is that good design and adaptive design are really the same thing. So, what we're really hoping is we can find what works for everybody, whether it's a storage solution, a cutting instrument, whatever. Typically, it's better for everybody. And what we want to do is bridge that gap in a lot of ways, where you see a lot of startups out there trying to do military civilian dual use development because they can get in on one side and then expand it and it becomes a big business. I'm a believer that there's that same connection with disabled and able bodied. And the reason that I believe this is you and I are both disabled. We look
Mm-hmm.
really different in terms of how
Mm-hmm.
our disabilities are manifest. And as a result, there is no identity of able or disabled. Let's talk about what task that I need to do. And if I'm unable to do it, then I have some degree of disability for that task. It could be a set of tasks, but no one of us, I don't believe, is disabled. It's a matter of just finding where you're able or providing adaptive or assistive solutions to where I can then become able bodied. And that, going full circle, goes to what I learned in the military. There's a task under certain conditions to a set of standards, and I either can do it or not do it. And if I
Mm-hmm.
have to do it with some type of adaptive product and then I can still do it, I am no longer disabled. And my partners and I actually created a model that we call the ability curve, because the reality is, if you look at disability not as a condition, but as something that is applied to a task or set of tasks, we're all either we start out functionally disabled as children, because if you're a child, you are functionally disabled to do adult tasks. You could be
Mm-hmm.
an able-bodied 8-year-old, but you cannot do an adult task.
Mm-hmm.
You should be in the same category as somebody who's disabled for whatever reason. So if it's grip strength, well, guess what? If we're designing a better knife for somebody who maybe is a senior with arthritis who's losing grip strength, now maybe a kid can begin cooking younger because they're actually functionally disabled to be an adult. But if it's safer and better cutting, maybe we can learn things. So if we look at it from a task perspective, changes the whole thing for how we look at everything, right? So for us, what we're trying to do as an organization is look and say, okay, what are other tasks that we can solve? Because when you look at a task, then the white space in the market grows. And you
Mm-hmm.
have people who, if you said, are you disabled? And then they would say, no. Well, do you have arthritis? Well, yeah. Do you use a knife like you would normally? Yeah. You're disabled. I got news for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Biology wins. So I think if we all figure that out and we design better, then and better, I don't just mean better functionally. The reason that we're getting interest in the non-disabled community is because it looks kind of cool, right? Like people
Yeah.
are like, oh, I kind of like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if you start to design and think that way across all design to include adaptive and assistive, then you come up with the better solutions. And I'm even on a kick lately where I'm like, hey, if you're a scuba diver, you understand adaptation and an adaptive technology better than anyone else. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people say, well, no human can breathe underwater, so it's not a really good example. Well, it is. We all, it's a limitation we have as human beings. Our limitation ranges are different, but I guarantee there are certain things that you can do better than somebody who may not have your challenges. The same with me and everybody else. And it's a matter of, if you look at this stuff differently, we can make some good changes on how we look at adaptive across the board. So that's kind of the long story of my knife and where we're headed, and hopefully where we're headed in my parent company as well. Because what I want to find are I would love to find disabled veteran or disabled veteran entrepreneurs who have ideas. Hey, you know what? I deal with this problem every day. I solve
Mm-hmm.
it with this piece of PVC and a pool noodle and duct tape. And if my team and I can look at it and say, we can commercialize that, then hopefully find a way to help them have the help that I did bringing this to market and really making some impact out there, which I think, that's what it's all about.
For sure, I think so too. That's cool. I like that. Just making things more accessible. When it's accessible, you don't become you kind of lose that disability label in that moment. So I
Well,
like
yeah,
that.
I would say this: nobody you hear nobody bitches about no ramps until they need a ramp, right?
Yeah.
In fact, people are like, "Why do we have to build a ramp?" And then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden they're injured permanently or temporarily, and then they're like, "We need ramps everywhere," and that's where I hit this point where I'm like, anything from how a door opens to any usually if we're designing around the least common denominator or the people it benefits the best, it's usually a better design anyhow. And that's what I think. There hasn't been money in it, is my thought. The best I can think of is nobody's made a argument enough yet that the market is big enough. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why for us, what we've tried to do is build our business around a confluence of symptoms or tasks or whatever to be able to say, if we could take stroke victims, if you could take all the people, let's say, that have upper extremity issues and go, well, wait a minute, this knife helps all of them. Well, all of a sudden you go from what people think is a small market. I remember getting in a little bit of a debate with an angel through one of the accelerators I went through when I said how big the market is for the Nulu.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I would argue with that. And I'd say I wouldn't, because if you take symptomatic manifestation of weakness, bad coordination, and dexterity loss,
Mm-hmm.
and you design around that, then guess what? You're not talking about disabled anymore. As I said, you're talking about kids, adults, anybody who may, from age related degeneration, may not have a condition, but they're disabled. Would they get a
Mm-hmm.
placard? Maybe not. But if we look and say, you can't use a knife anymore, guess what? I got news for you. You're disabled. So I think that's got to be the change, right? Like we all end up there. And, maybe I just hit on it, right? I'm thinking about when I talk to my kids, and they're good kids, but right there's the whole Gen Z lazy thing. If we all
Mm-hmm.
design around adaptive, then they don't have to take care of us. So maybe it's about you got to market it the right way for the benefit for the people who are caretakers. And I joke, but I will tell you, many of the people who ask us about this are not the people it helps. It's, hey, my mom has terrible arthritis and doesn't cook anymore, and she'll never buy that. Is it good for her? And it's like
Yeah.
hell to the yes, because with me, like my dad, when he was 88, he lived with us. He understood this. He used to like to cook and food prep, be in the kitchen
Mm-hmm.
while the action is going on. Well, guess what? Like the gifting world helps because the people who are the caretaker, they look and they say, well, geez, now I don't have to prepare 3 meals a day.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, the person who they were preparing the meals for, they don't want to be have meals prepared for them. They want to have that independence. So long answer again, but hopefully it answered the question.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. And I think you talked about passion. Passion is what makes us go. Passion is what makes us happy. When we feel like we have a purpose, life is just for me. I'm gonna speak for myself. When I feel like I have a purpose in life, like it's easy to put a smile on my face. And then being in the wheelchair, the times when my independency has been taken away from me, have not been happy. So
Right.
when I am independent, that's why I live in Cleveland because I can ride my power chair around and go places on my own and take care of things on my own. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I'm a man and I like to do things on my own. I take care of things. I don't want to rely on people. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
you
Well, and
know,
I think that's the interesting thing is that good good policy and everything around what we're
mm,
talking about also increases the workforce. all this, everyone's talking about work, right? All this time,
Mm-hmm.
work requirements and all this stuff. But I love how on one side you got work, you want to bring work requirements in, but you want to get rid of OSHA and ADA and all that kind of stuff. One of
Mm-hmm.
the things we hope that this creates is a bigger labor pool for restaurants, where if they
Mm-hmm.
want a certain part of their workforce to come from the disabled community who otherwise could not work, that person is going to love that job. And the act of feeding people, like working in a restaurant, is great. They're getting interaction, they're out there. So we're hoping actually that we can have some of that impact and create purpose for people who heretofore have been left behind.
Yeah.
And I love hearing that part, because frankly, I'll tell you, the other thing is, for you, it may be, whatever a cleaning business is, what's going to be your chosen business, but the purpose is that it's yours, and you wake up every day, right, and you have that, wow, you know what, I'm taking care of myself and family members and all that kind of stuff. And I think that not enough people are thinking that thought through, because for you, you've got an advantage where people look and say, oh, I may not be, they underestimate you on running a business. So that
Mm-hmm.
purpose might be to give them the finger and say, I'm going to be able to do it. And I'm going to own my own financial freedom and individual freedom. For me, I've been in entrepreneurial roles before, and I thought about, let's say, the money. What now for me with this world and working in the disabled space, and picking up disability along the road, courtesy of the Army and some bad decisions in my life. They weren't bad decisions. It was doing sports too long and all that. But for me now, it's impact, right? And
Mm-hmm.
as an entrepreneur, you're going to have headwinds all the time. You're going to have people underestimate you. I had so many people tell me stuff about this. I had a chef tell me, oh, the reason you think your knife's better is you're holding it wrong. And I'm like, I'm holding it like this. He was like, no,
Mm-hmm.
you hold a knife like this, and then this is balance. I said, that's not a good tool then. But if I didn't have the desire to say there's a better way to do it, and I didn't believe it, and my purpose wasn't to help people get that independence, then hearing no, having people tell me I should just hang it up, all that would be the Greek chorus of my failure. And I think that when you're waking up and you're going, I'm making a difference for you, I know that when you are successful, you'll be paying it forward in the disabled space and helping
Mm-hmm.
people who have that same thing. Your purpose will become this bigger thing of independence amongst, like, it's just, I can see it. And I think
Mm-hmm.
when you wake up every day and it's bigger than yourself and all that, it's just, I don't know. That's why I think we have so many issues now, where it's easy to fall for someone else's highlight reel and
Mm-hmm.
say this is success. And I look at it and I say, I don't care what car I drive, if I can wake up every day and have the autonomy to do what I'm doing and help people and now make an impact and make money doing it, you know that's now what I'm here to do. And that purpose thing's a big thing. So it's awesome hearing that's like that you're picking up on that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I appreciate that. It's bigger than all of us, and that's the lesson that I want to, you know, for me personally, that's what I want to take out of this. It's bigger than all of us, and paying it forward. Um, but about that time where I gotta, kind of wrap this up. So I got one last question for you. Is there, give me a piece of information or advice or any kind of thing you want to leave the audience with, whoever's listening.
you, you know the biggest thing for me is, I think that with the big change for me in life, in my business and everything, I got into Zen for a while, and not
Mm-hmm.
officially, but a lot of it was about ego and self and
Mm-hmm.
killing that. And it started with me with am I making a post on social media, as an example, for something to stroke my ego, and
Mm-hmm.
that sort of grew into something else. And you can see how that comes out in my business. I built a team. I've been asked many times by my team members, do you feel like you've lost control of this? I said it ceased to be mine when you became a team member, because it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
about me. This isn't about me. And the less it's about me, the more it becomes part of me, in the way that I think some people want it to be about them in the first place. So what I would tell people is like, just get outside of yourself, stop caring what people think, and find the people and ask for help. Because, as we were talking in the beginning, sometimes wanting to have all the answers is about projecting that certain self of I want to be the guy who everyone looks and says, that guy's buttoned down, knows everything, all that. When I started saying I don't know anything about anything and think that way, all of a sudden everybody wants you to help you become an expert and be successful. So what I'd say is don't make it about them. Make it about your team. Make it about the mission. Make it about making that change. Make it about the purpose you find. And the minute you start not making it about yourself, you're going to have a huge amount of success. Because it's the tide, the rising tide and all of that. But the reason that stuff is so overused is because it generally rings true most of the time. But I think people really do get caught up in, I got to be this rugged entrepreneur. I got to be this guy, who does this. I have to be an alpha male. I have to be whatever. And I leveled up my success so much when I looked and said, I don't want to learn how to code. I don't want to learn how to optimize my supply chain. And as a result, I'm going to find people who believe in the vision I created and the purpose that was behind that, because I think it's sincere and people buy into that purpose, and then they'll execute and do the stuff I don't want to do, and now I'm successful. So, I guess get out of yourself and stop worrying about what people think and worry about what people tell you who truly want to help you. And that's where success will happen. And what I would leave with is, and this is my common fight with people, my debate, and with one of my partners once, as my attorney partner. I love this guy. He's a great IP lawyer. And he said, Doug, he goes, every time we get off a phone call, you're optimistic. And I'm paraphrasing. And I said, yeah. And he goes, how many businesses fail? And I said, yeah, but that's statistic. The whole, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. That statistic doesn't get to the root of why that business fails. So you could take a large percentage of those and say they fail because bad location, all that kind of stuff, all the basics. And if you can build the right team to work around all that stuff that makes other businesses fail, then your success quotient your probability goes way up. So do I think that we're a guaranteed win? No. But because I've thought I'm not going to do all this stuff, and I'm going to find the people who want to go with me on this journey and get in this boat, and that they're now going to solve all the individual problems of where other businesses fail, I think that raises our opportunity. And that's what I would tell someone who wants to start a business is do that. And don't be afraid to talk about it, because most people won't start a business. They're going to tell you why you're going to fail. And write that down so later you can give them the finger. And that's where I'll leave it.